guys, it's Julian, and today I'm super excited to be showing you how to make techno like Wehbba. As usual, you get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and all that kind of stuff in this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it'll be available shortly. And let's get started. So, this is what we heard in the intro. We're at 127 BPM, and the first sound we have here is the kick, which sounds like this. So this is a rumble kick. It's a little bit different from a more standard rumble kick. I'll show you. Here is the dry, just kick sample with no effects on it. So you can hear the main difference here between this and like a more standard rumble kick is the starting kick. This is a lot softer and kind of deeper sounding. So for this style of techno, this works really well. Like this more sort of like drum code style, you know. It's not always about just having like the strongest like hard style type techno kicks, you know. You still sometimes want to have something a little softer like this, and then we put it through a bunch of effects obviously to beef it up and make it cleaner, but yeah, and kind of make it stronger as well. But yeah, so the first thing that we have here is the Saturator, which sounds like this. I'll turn all the effects back on, and here is without it and with it. So you can hear what's happening here is the Saturator is really fattening the kick up. It's giving it a lot more attack. Like it's kind of giving it that like kind of like mid-rangey thing. And yeah, so just got a bit of drive on that, a bit of the bass frequency turned up a little bit. And yeah, after that we have this audio effect track, and this is the rumble. Basically, here's without it. And then with it. So yeah, this is pretty important. So the way I'm doing this here is I have two chains, a dry chain and then a wet chain, and the wet chain has all the effects on it for the rumble. So the first thing we have here is the reverb. So here is what that sounds like by itself. So yeah, and then we have that going into this amp, which you can hear is, for one, making it mono, but also it's really focusing in on that low end and creating a lot of like nice rumble down there. And then we put that through the low pass filter. And there you go, you have just the rumble. And then the last thing we have on there is we just have it sidechained to the dry kick. But yeah, then that underneath the kick, that is the rumble. It's pretty simple, but you know, it's just a matter of kind of like fine tuning it. Like the compressor, for example, definitely sidechaining it really helps to just kind of make it fit better with the kick and kind of like, you know, just sort of give it some more nuance and not make it just like constant reverb in your face. So yeah, after that we have a bit of drum bus and the Saturator. Here is without them. And then with them. So you can hear, these are really fattening the kick up. We have a bit of this before the rumble, like with that Saturator that I showed you before. But you also want to do a little bit of this afterwards, because you need to put some effects on the rumble and the dry kick at the same time to kind of make them, sort of like glue them together, if that makes any sense. So that's what we're doing here. I have the drum bus, and then the Saturator just kind of adds that last little bit of like kind of strength to it. And yeah, pretty simple stuff there. After that, the last thing on the kick is the CQ8, and with this, we are just scooping out around like 245 to 310 hertz. So technically, it's kind of lower and higher because of the sweep here. But basically what's happening is we're just scooping out that range. I'll show you, like, here's without the CQ8. And then with it. So you can hear that range, like that kind of boxy low mid frequency stuff was kind of getting in the way there. So yeah, we're just cutting that out. And then we have a low end boost and a high end boost to kind of give it some more crispness and a bit more like low end thump. And then we have this little like sort of boost here. So I'll show you, here is without that. And then with it. So I'm just boosting. That's really where like a lot of this attack and like the hard hitting punch is with a lot of these kinds of kicks. So that's why I'm boosting that there. It just kind of brings that out a little bit more. And that's the kick. The next thing we have here is the lead, which sounds like this. So I'll show you the notes on this one first. It's really simple. It's basically just following notes from the G minor chord. You can see we have G, the root, A sharp, the minor third, D, the fifth, and then the only note that we have in here that isn't in that chord is this A. But that's kind of simple. It's just one semitone down from A sharp, which is the minor third, and it's also the ninth if you really know your music theory. But yeah, and then like this note here, just another A sharp up top. So it's pretty simple. With these kinds of things, you know, you just need to kind of like play around with these minor chord shapes and these minor scale kind of shapes, I guess you would say, and just get creative with like these kinds of things where it's like rhythmic and also melodic. So then, for the sound on this one, I made it using analog. What we have here is 2 saw waves. You can see I've got the first one up an octave, and it's detuned a little bit. And then those are just going into a low-pass filter. The low-pass has an envelope like that. Gives it that pluck you hear. We got the amp envelope set like that, so it kind of like goes into the sound a little bit. And then the last thing we have in there is a bit of unison. So that's what's making the sound more like super saw-y. And detuned. After that, we have this echo and this reverb. So these are really just giving it some space. I'll show you. Here's without them. And then with them. So, yeah, you can hear what's happening there. We got the echo doing dotted eighth notes. Reverb, just giving it a bit of reverb. You know, with this, you can kind of have a lot of room to add these in. Like, this is definitely more than I would do if the lead was just constantly playing, because there's so much space between some of the notes. Like that, you know, you gotta fill that with something. So that's where the reverb and the echo come in. After that, we have a bit of Saturator and some drum bus. So those are just kind of fattening it up. There's without them. And then with them. So you can hear what's happening there. It's really just taking this lead and fattening it up and kind of getting it away from just sounding like a dry synth, you know. An issue that I have a lot, or I know that a lot of people have, is like, you know, when you're using a synth and you don't do something like this to kind of fatten it up and give it more texture, a lot of times it can end up just sounding like a very dry, kind of dull synth sound. But when you add stuff like this on, it gives it some texture, fattens it up, and makes it a little bit more your own as well. So then after that, the last things that we have on there is just a compressor, side chaining into the kick, and then I have this EQ8 here, which is just cutting at the line. And then I've got this cut around like 267 hertz, so yeah, you can hear it just kind of cleans it up. It's still fat, and it's still got some nice kind of low sort of frequencies to fill out that space and make it fat, but it's just not got those like boxy ones that were happening at 267. That is the lead. The next thing we have here is the second lead, which sounds like this. So what's going on here, you can see, these are the notes this is playing. Basically, if you listen to this with the lead, you can hear. It's meant to be kind of like some leader notes into that lead. Like, we kind of have like just this little kind of pattern that is playing there. It's not happening a lot. It's very sparse. It's very just kind of like, you know, just adding a little bit to what the main lead is already doing. So, yeah, so from the notes on this one, you can see pretty simple stuff. It's just following, again, the G minor chord shape. We got like G in the root, A sharp, the minor third, A, which is, again, just one note down from A sharp, and also it is the ninth. And then over here, we got the same thing. And then I just added in the fifth there, which is D. So, pretty simple for the notes. Again, it's just a matter of playing around with these kind of like standard minor chord shapes and knowing how to get creative with it. But for the sound on this one, I made it using analog. And what we have is we have a square wave and a saw wave. The square wave is an octave up, and the saw wave is just standard. And then I have those going into a low-pass filter. The low-pass filter has an envelope on it, and you can see I have two automations. So I have one where it's automating the attack of the envelope. You can hear it goes from wah to wah, you know, really quick like that. And then I have one that's automating the envelope amount, which is basically like making it sound like it's opening the filter. You can hear if I turn that off. It's very dull. It just stays in the same place. When you automate that, it kind of brings it to life. So we got the amp envelope set like this, pretty much the same thing. And then the only other thing I have there is just a bit of vibrato and a bit of unison. I'll show you without those. And then with them, so you can hear, they just give it a lot of character and bring it to life. After that, we've got a bit of echo and a bit of reverb. Again, very similar to the other lead, just gives it some space. These are some very sparse leads. There's a lot of space between the notes, which you can fill with echo and reverb. So that's what we're doing there. You can see I've got this one on 8th notes, so a little bit different because the other lead was on dotted 8th notes. And then we got, yeah, pretty nice amount of reverb there. After that, we have a bit of drum bass, just kind of fattening it up. Here's without it. And then with it, so you can hear it, definitely making a big difference there. And then the last thing we have on here is just a CQ8, which is cutting out the lawn. And that is it for the second lead. The next thing we have here is the drone, which sounds like this. And so what this is doing is it's actually just playing a G minor chord. It's very similar notes to the leads, where you can see I've got G and A sharp, so the root note and the minor third, and then we have a ninth underneath that with A. So this works really well here because you have so much stuff happening kind of in like the low mid range. Now when you kind of start blending in something super high like this, like it's not gonna get in the way of any of that, but it fits so well into the mix, you know, like it's so different from the other sounds. So it's a good way to make it a bit more interesting without getting in the way of everything that's already happening. So for the sound on this one, I'm mainly using Operator, and what this is actually just a pretty simple sort of like FM pad sound. You can see we have 3 sine waves just creating this waveform. I'll show you. So yeah, pretty simple FM stuff. You can see I have the second one detuned a little bit. Here's the difference if I have that off. Very like straight. But with it, gives us some movement. And then I have those going into a bandpass filter. And you can see the bandpass is set like this. And then I have this LFO here just sort of slowly modulating it to give it some movement throughout the track. So yeah, after that I have a bit of chorus. This helps to kind of split it out and make it wider. The thing with this sound is like, you know, you do already have a lot of stuff going on that's like just straight down the middle or mostly down the middle. So having this to kind of split this out helps to, again, sort of like make it fit into the mix better because you have it more in like the stereo field as opposed to everything else, which is down the center. So you'll feel like there's kind of more room for everything else there. After that, I have a bit of reverb. Here's without it. And with it, pretty simple stuff. It's a pad, so you probably want some reverb there. After that, we just have a bit of drum bass to kind of like fatten it up, give it a bit more warmth. This really brings it to life. It gives it that nice texture, especially after the chorus and the reverb. Like adding this on top of those can sound really good. After that, we just have a bit of a compressor just side shading into the cake, and then CQ8 cutting out the lawn, and that is it for the drone. The next thing we have here is the hi-hats, which sound like this. So you can hear we have a few different like styles of hi-hats here. We have sort of like this one, which is the main hi-hat, is just playing on the upbeats. Then we have these ones, which are playing just 16th notes, just constantly. And with these, I have 2 layers. I have this one and this one. So you can hear this is sort of the main one that you hear. And then we have this one, which is being panned left and right constantly, and it's very much on the high end as well. And this just kind of sits on top of that. So here's what the other hi-hat sounds like without that. And then with it, so you can hear, yeah, it's a really good way of just, again, bringing this to life, like making it sound more interesting, kind of giving it something small like that you wouldn't necessarily notice right away, but it's adding a lot to the track. And then we also have these hi-hats, which are like kind of playing off of each other. You know, like this one just hits that one note. And then we have all those little ones with the shaker there. And then I have all these hi-hats in a group with some processing as well. So I talk about this a lot in my videos. You know, a lot of times I'll put like the kick and the bass in a group together, or all the percussion or whatever. But when you take these similar sounds and put them together and process them at the same time, the same way, it makes everything sound a lot more cohesive, and it really helps to bring it to life and make it more interesting and just more professional sounding. I'll show you. Here is with no group processing. And then with all of it. So big differences. The first thing we have here is the reverb. You can see I don't have a lot of this. The dry wet is only at 8%. But it's just kind of giving us like, kind of putting this all in a room. You know, it helps to give everything the same space. A big problem with putting samples together that I feel like a lot of people have is a lot of times the samples will sound like they're from completely different places. This is a really good way to solve that problem because it kind of, again, just puts everything into the same space and makes it all sound like, you know, it's all happening in the same room or what have you. After that, we have a drum bus. Here's without it. And with it, so you can hear this is really fattening the hi-hats up and making them not just sound like some dry, simple drum machine hi-hats, but it's also kind of helping to glue everything together because we're putting the same saturation on everything at once. And when you do that, you know, everything has a lot more of like a similar vibe and a more cohesive vibe because they're all getting that same effect at the same time. After that, the last thing we have on here is just an EQ8 cutting at the low end and doing that little high-end boost. And that is it for the hi-hats. After that, the last thing we have here is the percussion, which altogether sounds like this. So what we've got going on here is we have these 3 different percussion sounds. I have this one, this clap, which you can see has a bit of like a delay on it, and then we have this little operator sound, which is really simple to make. All it is just some white noise going into a bandpass filter, and you'll hear. That's what that sounds like with the just dry. I've got the resonance all the way up, but then we put that into a distortion, and you get some cool percussion. And I noticed this in a few of Wehbba's tracks as well. I think he uses the sound a lot. And then I have that going through a bit of echo. Then I have some group processing on all 3 of those at the same time. Again, just like all the hi-hats, you know, I'm just putting it all together. We've got like everything going through this reverb. This one's a little bit more than the hi-hats because this is kind of more like background extra ear candy type of stuff as compared to the hi-hats, which are meant to be like, you know, really up front. So you don't want to go crazy with the reverb on those. But here you can. But then we also have a bit of drum bus to fatten everything up. You can hear the difference there. And then the last thing we have on there is just a bit of EQ8 cutting at the low end. And that is it for the percussion. And that is also going to be it for this video. So, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Let me know what you want to see me make a video on next. As always, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and all that kind of stuff in this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it will be available shortly. Thank you so much, everybody. And I will see you tomorrow with another video.